As I'm building, I often find myself wanting to do better and better each time in an endless loop of trying to reach perfection. And living in a digital age, seeing people create the crazy things, building better and better, outdoing each other and just building things I would have never thought of, doesn't really help with that. I do quite often find myself comparing my builds or videos or both and just don't really think that they're that good. So with every build and video, I've tried to do better, bigger, more detailed, better pacing, chasing textbook-like execution, perfection in a way. Sometimes to an extent where it wasn't even fun anymore and it just felt like a chore to do. And that's not right, because building is supposed to be fun. And with that being said, we're gonna take a step back and scale things down. For a bit at least. Having built a huge part of the terrain here that you can see in the last episode, there's still a bunch missing, which is why we're gonna stay in this area for a bit and take on another chunk of terrain that has to be built in today's episode. All that being said, I do want to start splitting projects into multiple episodes or doing smaller projects from now on to upload and build more consistently, since larger projects and videos sort of pressure you to do exactly what I just talked about for the last minute, which kind of results in even less uploads, because it sort of leads to a bunch of procrastination and it delays building and the build process by a bunch. So considering all that, we're gonna tackle this little area over here for now, for which I have some sort of plan already. Since we're connecting that area to the already existing terrain, we're gonna be building in the same terrain style, which means we'll be using the same blocks. Having said resources left over from our last little terrain adventure, we luckily won't really have to farm any more resources. And worst case scenario, we'll just ask that guy over there. Sadly, that doesn't save us from all the digging though, so we will have to set up a beacon real quick and remove the unnecessary terrain parts over there, because they seem to be a tiny bit in the way. So we'll grab the beacon real quick, set it up, and then we can get straight to digging and clearing out the area. Luckily, it shouldn't take as long as it did last time, I hope. Wish me luck, I need it. And with the shulker set up, it's time to start digging. Now, having all the terrain that was in the way removed, yes, the two little island thingies are supposed to stay for now, we sadly have to remove the beacon real quick before talking about our glorious terrain plans. And of course also pick up all the old blocks in the area, and while we're at it, we can also really quick fix up the water over here. Then we should be fine. Except for fixing up the entire area here with water, which I forgot. But while we're at it, we can just do that real quick. And with that done, it does look a lot better already. With all that out of the way now, it's finally time to talk about the plan. As already mentioned, keeping the two little islands here was intentional, since the rough idea for this area is to keep those two little islands while creating a ring of terrain surrounding them, creating another point of interest in this area that draws your eyes to it. And the two little islands, they'll be accessible by two little hanging bridges connecting them to the terrain ring, which again will also be connected by another potential hanging bridge eventually to the mainland. And aside of all that, there used to be an idea of a world tree in the middle of the little island that's gonna be surrounded by the terrain ring, which we came up in one of my live streams a while ago, which would just be way too much, to be honest. So we're gonna stick to the small island in the middle, and instead of a world tree, we're gonna build a normal, medium-sized oak tree maybe, which would fit better in this area by not taking away all the interest from the surroundings, but it also just makes more sense to build a world tree elsewhere. When we're gonna do that, you're asking? I've got no clue. But we'll get there eventually, just not today. I mean, we've talked about it. We're gonna do smaller stuff for now. With all that said, I do want to start building now, so I'd say we'll grab the materials real quick, and on the way, also grab the Lily of the Valleys here real quick, because they're somewhat rare, and we barely have any. And after that, we can start building in a minute. And as you can see, we still have over one entire chest full of shulkers, which are full of materials again. So we didn't run out yet, so we'll just grab all the shulkers real quick, and then we can just instantly start building and putting down some of the terrain. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. With the two little islands, or the island and the rock in place, as well as the outlines of the terrain ring, you might get my idea for this area a bit better now. Size-wise, I would have preferred to make the rock a bit smaller, but creating good-looking hanging bridges with big height difference between their start and their end is quite a challenge, to be honest. So I sort of had to make the rock a bit bigger, but I feel like it still somewhat works at least. Especially together with the terrain ring on the outside, which when we look at the blueprint turned out bigger than expected, to be honest. But it's gonna be amazing, I'm quite sure. Enough yapping though, we still have to build a tiny bit more. A couple hours later, you can see that we finally have the terrain ring in place now. And it's actually starting to look like something. And I feel like it does connect quite well to the already existing terrain, and while there's no detailing yet, it's still looking somewhat decent, at least in my opinion. And if you look at it from above, you can clearly see that it's coming along just as planned. We do have the island in the middle with the ring around. And we just don't talk about all the missing stuff at the moment, that's for later. In terms of the texturing and gradient, I've used the same color palette as before, going from darker to lighter tones with basalt, deep slate, cyan terracotta, tuff, pale moss, coal ore, and for the light gray tones, mainly just stone and a bunch of andesite. Maybe a little too much now that I look at it. But yeah, while texturing, I just took the shadows and sunlight in consideration, so where the sunlight gets to, it's brighter, and where there's shadow, it's darker. Simple math basically. And overall, I just tried to make it not too dark and keep the stone-ish light grey look. Coming up here again, you always see one big problem that we haven't gotten rid of yet. We won't get around it. It will be time for another round of digging and building a simple underwater terrain. Well, basically just fixing it real quick, but there's still gonna be a bunch. But don't worry, we will only do the inside of the terrain ring today, so we'll basically break it down into manageable parts, which means that we can do the other parts later, spread across episodes or eventually live streams. Which you guys, when trying to learn how to build better, or basically in any field of life, could probably do too, considering we're all comparing ourselves to people with way more experience than us. It's pretty easy to lose yourself in things that are way too far ahead, and you just lose sight of what's right in front of you. Which in my case is doing the underwater terrain for just this area. So next time we're trying to take 5 steps at a time, handling multiple things at once, it might just be time to take a step back, breathe, and focus on the step right ahead of you. And with all that being said, it is time for another round of digging. So with the beacon set up, we'll get straight to it. And that's all the digging done for this episode at least. Can't wait for the next one. But that aside, you can definitely see a huge improvement compared to before without the mud and the depth added to the underwater parts. Having this little task done now leads us to the next one, which is the foliage and detailing, because if we're being honest, it does still look quite dead around here. So we definitely have to change that with a bunch of seagrass. Also known as we'll go get some bone meal real quick and spam it underwater for a minute or two. I mean, if it works, it works. And aside of the seagrass, we'll of course also have to do the parts above the water and add a ton of grass, bushes, and a tiny bit of everything. Pretty much just the same foliage as we've used the last time. I mean, it's still the same biome and terrain style, so it does make sense. So we'll quickly grab enough bones for bone meal from our gigantic tower slash mob farm slash monument, and then head back and get straight to adding our foliage underwater as well as above water. But yeah, for now it's just spamming a bit of bone meal, and later on we can maybe add some kelp as well. 3 minutes later, looking from above, it isn't too much, but it definitely adds to it and makes it feel a bit less flat. Generally, for a lot of things, you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel to make it look good, or at least somewhat decent. So we'll leave the underwater part as it is for now, and head over to the foliage above the ground, since there's still quite some to do. So quickly grabbing all the resources, we'll get straight back to it. And that is all the simple foliage and rocks and all that kind of detailing in place. Well, it's not too much, it pretty much does the job. As said, you don't need something crazy every single time. You sort of want to create a balance between detail and no detail, to not have a complete cluttered mess. Aside of the foliage and detailing, we do still have the mob proving left though, which we'll pick up in a second. And after that, we can head over to the hanging bridges that are still missing, as well as the tree in the middle of the island. I'm quite sure that I just want to go for a little oak tree, to be honest. Keeping it simple. And the same thing with the hanging bridges, actually. There's no need for something too crazy, since this area is supposed to be a calmer spot. Some kind of place to go to when you just want to relax and maybe fish a little. Actually might make sense. We could technically build some kind of little fishing area at the end eventually, because right now we do still have to worry about 1, the mob proving, 2, the bridges, and last but not least, the oak tree. So it's time to quickly go ahead and make sure that at least during the day there's no mob spawning around or below here. And the same thing goes for this dark little area in the whole of the terrain over here. It's definitely not supposed to be a home for creeper, so we're gonna fix this real quick. And with all of the underground lit up, we should be fine, hopefully. I mean, we'll know once we get blown up by a creeper. Next on the agenda is the hanging bridge from our previous terrain to our current one, for which we probably have to remove a bit of the rocks over here on this side, because I'm not exactly sure where we're gonna put the ends of the hanging bridge, but we will have to change a bit of the terrain as said. There's probably no way around it. And that's bridge number 1. As you can see, I'm trying to go for a more improvised look with the ropes and signs attached to make it seem a bit more stable, but still very wonky and is a tiny bit dangerous. Overall, I just felt like a rather thin hanging bridge does way better in this more rural area. There's no people living on the terrain we've built today, so it doesn't really have to be accessible safely, right? And as you've seen, I just connected it to the already existing pathway on the mainland with a tiny way. Either way, there's still 2 bridges left, which we're getting to now. I mean, I can't just talk about 3 bridges and only build 1. Doesn't really work like that now, does it? So we're just adding the last 2 bridges over here, connecting the terrain ring to the middle island, keeping it in the same style as the one we've just built. Having those 2 bridges in place, we can finally access the middle island, somewhat safely at least, and we don't have to use our elytra anymore. Having the bridges in place now, they actually feel just about right in my opinion. Feeling wonky and improvised, it just fits the area so much, considering once we've got the tree in place, it might just be a little hangout spot from people or children that wanted to access the island without getting wet all the time. So just put the bridges there to access it safely. Now the most important thing for this though is the tree, which we'll have to add now because the island ain't the island without the tree. I mean, it's just not the same cozy feeling, being all open like this. Sometimes in life, you just need a little oak tree to sit under. And with the last couple leaves in place, we've got our very own oak tree down here, which complements the entire area so much by creating another main point of interest with the bridges leading to it. More or less guiding your eyes onto the main focus, which in our case is the island and the tree. These dynamic lines, that's what they're called, are often used in quite literally any kind of art as a fundamental tool to create a sense of motion, guiding the viewer's eye and adding vitality to the art or certain parts of the artwork. In simple words, they just put focus on the main part of the build in our case. All the yapping aside, I don't really want any mobs to spawn here, so I thought of adding a couple hanging lanterns from the tree, which not just makes it look a bit more magical, but also solves our issue with mob proving. Having them in place, it's not actually looking too bad, in my opinion, and it's looking even better at night with no sunlight around. Additionally to the lanterns, I've thought about adding a little bench over here to watch the sunrise eventually. which is why we might as well just do that real quick, considering I already took the materials with me. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Simple bench with trapdoors for the back probably works. Considering you actually want your arms to rest on the armrest, the shelves just make more sense, since they're a bit thicker than the trapdoors. Now, the only thing left to eventually enjoy the view from here is removing all the unnecessary moss over here. It just takes up way too much space on the screen. That out of the way though, we might actually be able to enjoy the view watching the sunrise later. Now, while we're at it, I want to add a little platform for some old fishermen to fish on over here, which probably comes here in the very early morning to fish, and eventually even enjoy the sunrise, sitting below our lovely oak tree. Now just a few more barrels and composter, and then we're pretty much good. I don't really want something big here, so we'll just keep it very small and simple. Some improvisable platform to fish on. Now we're all done, but before I forget, a little shout out to Simply Knight. He makes lovely videos and insane builds, so definitely check him out, guys. You can find him in the description. But yeah, your home is all done, man. It's all yours. You can finally move in. But yeah, that's it for today, except for actually fishing and watching the sunrise. Coming to an end though. If you do find yourself comparing yourself a lot, just like I do, remember that you should build for yourself and no one else. There's no narrative you have to stick to, no one you have to keep up with, and even if you strive to get better, remember perfection is just a jail keeping you hostage, just like comparison does, at least when you compare yourself way too much. But yeah, there's so much to do and build out there, so build or do something you like, and instead of trying to make it perfect, just make it yours. That being said, thank you for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. Hope you had fun, and yeah, you can find all the mods used on my Discord, which is linked in the description, together with my Patreon. There will be a new word download on there today as well, so a special thank you to all my patrons, which are on the screen right now. And yeah, that's it for today. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time.